50% turnover should not be acceptable. It's not the cost of doing business. We need to invest more in ongoing professional development.
In those organizations, we often hear that there is a significant difference in turnover rates between their certified and uncertified staff. Nationally, the turnover rate for direct support professionals is somewhere between 40 and 50% pretty typically. We've talked to organizations where their certified staff are turning over at closer to 10%. So it's a huge difference.
We want to keep high-performing direct support professionals who are incumbent workers. We want to keep them in their work. The best way to keep them in their work is recognize their skills and pay them for it. And it's going to reduce turnover.
Welcome to IDD Leader, where human services leaders grow their impact, lead with heart, and build the workplaces our field deserves. I'm your host, Nate Beers. Let's dive in. When it comes to the field of intellectual and developmental disabilities, when your workforce wins, everybody wins. And nobody knows that better than my guests on today's episode. This is part 2 of my conversation with them, so if you want to catch part 1, you can, but you can also jump in right here now. I'm honored to have on the show Joe Macbeth, the president and CEO of the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, and his colleague Dan Hermreck, who oversees the eBadge Academy, the credentialing process for direct support professionals. They continue the conversation and share just incredible insights into what transformations happen as organizations create a career ladder for DSPs, where they don't just have to promote to advance their career, but where they're advancing it within that same role of being a direct support professional. And also they share insights on what's going on around the country and around the whole issue of professionalizing this workforce. I am very confident you're going to enjoy today's conversation. So without further ado, let's get into it right now. Can you, either of you, share an example of an agency that's really used the credentialing and kind of what results they saw, any kind of a before and after, or what its impact was?
Yeah, what we hear a lot from organizations, especially organizations that are doing it well, and doing it well means providing a support system. Organizations that struggle with the eBadge Academy are organizations that just, hand a login and a password to a DSP and say, best of luck to you. The high achieving DSPs might achieve certification under that model, but most DSPs won't. The organizations that are doing it well are providing skills mentors. They're providing what we call a workforce champion, someone to check in with DSPs, see how they're doing, help them to make those initial connections between that thing that happened last week and this skill standard that you're supposed to demonstrate. In those organizations, we often hear that there is a significant difference in turnover rates between their certified and uncertified staff. And, typically nationally, the turnover rate for direct support professionals is somewhere between 40 and 50% pretty typically. We've talked to organizations where their certified staff are turning over at closer to 10%. So it's a huge difference.
Wow, that would be a big difference. Yeah, go ahead.
A huge difference. I would just add, all of the things that Dan said, the organization needs to buy in at every level of an organization. It can't just be a small group of people over here doing it. It needs to be led by leadership. And when DSPs go through this process, we make it sound like it's easy, but it's not. There's rigor involved with this. And if we highly recommend, although we have no control over this, when a direct support professional achieves a level of certification, they need to be compensated somehow. You need to receive some sort of financial remuneration, typically because virtually all organizations are using existing budgets to finance this type of project. They're given bonuses or stipends, which is fine. But if you give a direct support professional a bonus today for $500, that money's gone tomorrow on a bill or car repairs or snow tires or something like that. We would recommend, and we're making a lot of headway towards this, is getting states to fund career ladder incentives and work it in a rate setting methodology where a provider will pull down a higher rate from the state and Medicaid. And when a direct support professional achieves certification, they receive an increase in their hourly wages. And not a modest increase, a significant increase. And that's a career ladder. We want to keep high performing direct support professionals who are incumbent workers. We want to keep them in their work. The best way to keep them in their work is recognize their skills and pay them for it. And it's going to reduce turnover.
And just touching on what Joe said, we talk a lot about career ladders, and often when people hear us say career ladders, they will think a career ladder out of direct support. How do we take this DSP and convert them to a nurse or a social worker or a supervisor? And that's wonderful for some DSPs. If DSPs really want to become nurses or social workers or supervisors, more power to them. That's great. We think the certification path can help them prepare for those professions as well. But there's a lot of DSPs out there that want to stay in direct support. And we want to have a way to distinguish those veteran, highly skilled professionals from the person you just hired off the street last week. And yeah, it's important that Medicaid rates recognize that difference, that when you have highly skilled support being provided, it's different and should be compensated at a different level than when you have people who haven't yet developed those skills.
That's a great point. And I think every single agency leader would quickly be able to identify and say, here's our core that carry a lot of the load and are just, you know, like all-star DSPs that they pray every night don't leave the
Yeah.
agency to go somewhere else because they're kind of the backbone. And um and so to be able to say that to grow your career, you don't have to leave this, you know, into some other position. You don't have to. I mean, it's great when DSPs do go on to become supervisors or managers or directors, but it's also great when they're continuing as direct support professionals. And so I see the real value in what you're sharing. A follow-up then would be some providers might hesitate because of the cost or the time, but you've kind of already answered this. I'm hearing how you've made it bite-sized so the time doesn't have to be this overwhelming commitment, especially, I guess, compared to an earlier iteration of it. And then if the turnover rate really is that starkly different, I mean, there's a lot of money that goes into the cost of hiring, training, losing them, repeat hiring, training, you know, and marketing, recruiting, all this stuff. But are you guys in conversations, or do you hear what takes a provider that's maybe on the fence, you know, to really be able to see like, no, this is going to be worth it?
I know Dan probably has an answer to this too. I think at a macro level, Nate, I think states need to buy in. You know, we have been fortunate to work with at least 6 states who have been piloting the eBadge Academy, funded through the American Rescue Plan Act. So it's temporary money, ARPA money, and in different ways doing a statewide certification pilot program. The data that if they're evaluating the data, not only in the outcomes that DSPs are helping people achieve, which are you can't put a price tag on that,
Absolutely.
but their job satisfaction, the growth in their professional skills, um, the reduction in turnover, the improvement in retention. Those types of things are hard to argue with after 35 years of going to state legislatures year after year after year, asking for more money and providing nothing in return. If you can go to a state legislature and say, here is our pilot project that we have just invested X amount of dollars in with the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, certifying this state's direct support professionals, and it has led to a reduction in turnover by 35%, which saved us X amount of dollars. You're going to get funded. You're going back to the state legislature and saying, we are saving us money by investing in our direct support professional. And that's been our theory all along. When we created this, Dan, we talked about this is a way to save the system money. And it works, but it took some courage. It's like a leap of faith. We've been able to establish really good working relationships with some state offices, and they trusted the process. They trusted NADSP. They trusted the eBadge Academy. And now we're starting to, very, very soon, New York State is going to release the evaluation report of this pilot project with some first of its kind important data.
Yeah, I would just add, Nate, I think you're absolutely right in what you said is that, there's all these costs associated with turnover. And if any leaders out there haven't done that calculation about what they're paying each and every time they need to hire a DSP, that's a really eye-opening exercise. I think turnover is so widespread in our field that it becomes like that old analogy that fish are unaware of water.
Yeah.
And we create all these mechanisms to deal with the turnover. We hire these armies of recruiters, and we've got all this overtime money that we just expect to spend week after week after week. It just becomes the way that we have done business and the way that we have survived. It becomes normal. And if you think about a world where turnover is 30% lower than it is, that creates a whole wealth of possibilities that have been kept from us so far.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just the impact that turnover. I mean, we talk about we always go back to money in our field, and I understand why. Been doing this a long time. The cost of turnover is excessive. But what we don't talk about is the impact that turnover has on other direct support professionals who are there picking up the extra work, who are there breaking in new direct support professionals and hoping that they stay, are working extra shifts, are tired, and tired direct support professionals can make mistakes. And direct support professionals who make mistakes are expendable. So we don't talk enough about the impact that turnover has on the remaining workers. And when you reduce turnover by 25, 35%, that's an impact that's going to have other benefits to your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm actually very excited about the pilot, the data that you're describing right now.
Where do you see it?
I'm very excited about that. I'm in Pennsylvania, so I know that there's been a whole movement towards this whole performance-based contracting where they're doing the very things that you're talking about. But to bring it even back to the micro or the more individual level, excuse me, a few months ago, I had Nick Filarelli from Core Services of Northeast
Yeah.
Tennessee
Yeah.
on the podcast, and he described a leap of faith moment where they said, "We're really sure if we invest heavily in our workforce, it's the long term benefits, both tangible like money, dollars, and also intangibles will be far worth it." But that they had a couple years where they just went like way over. I mean, I don't know the numbers, but way over their budget for training and investing in their frontline staff and in their supervisors. Of course, now things have come full circle there, and they've become sort of this. I don't know if you want to call it a model organization, but very well recognized. I mean, they won the award from that you guys are part of, the Moving Mountains Award a few years
Yep.
ago, and so it's it's fascinating to me to hear about it, not just at the individual agency level, which I completely believe in, that when you give the right investment, not any investment, but the right investment, you will see a return that far outweighs that initial investment. But to hear that same concept playing out on a more macro level, state level, Medicaid dollar reimbursement level, I'm very excited about what that, if it if it could just get rolled out right, because there's always the difficulties of having to go from the theory to the practice. But yeah, anyhow, that's very exciting.
Well, this saves states and organizations from creating a whole buffet of different certifications that are not necessarily universal or portable. We want to have something that is recognized by the field. So if an organization is interviewing it, and by the way, if anybody's in HR, if you're interviewing a direct support professional who has a DSP level 3 certification, I'm here to give you a reference to hire that person because that person has demonstrated a high level of skill. And
Absolutely.
and that's what you want. You want that DSP to take that certification with them because they do move, and an organization can hire with confidence.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Um, so for a provider that wants to kind of take their first step towards credentialing, maybe they're not in a state that's already incentivizing it, or I guess they could be, and they're just trying to, jump in with that. But what's sort of the first step? Are they kind of like going on your website, reaching out to you, or is there sort of a clear on ramp for them, or what's that?
Yeah,
If do they run it as a
absolutely.
pilot, like for a few DSPs, or what's? Give me
Sure.
paint a picture for me.
Yeah, they should absolutely go to our website, nadsp.org. There's some information there. There's also a form you can fill out to connect with us and have a broader discussion. But yeah, I think in a lot of cases, a pilot is a way to start. Um, maybe you purchase 24, 25 seats the first year, and you have a fall cohort of 12 and a spring cohort of 13, and you just you see how it goes, and you figure out how to make it work within your organization, within your organizational culture. We do have a lot of flexibility built into the eBadge Academy. And so, each organization does have to do a little bit of crafting of what their own internal approach is going to be.
I would say, and I would add, and I'm way off script here. Um, if I'm running an organization, if I'm the executive director at an organization and I'm starting to seriously think about dipping my toes into certification, I personally would start with we haven't talked about our frontline supervisor certification. I would make sure that all of my frontline supervisors go through the frontline supervisor certification eBadge Academy. It's very similar to the DSP one, but it's based on the University of Minnesota's frontline supervisor competency set. Because when you have a cadre of certified frontline supervisors, they understand the process, they understand the value, they've gone through, submitting badges themselves, they will have bought in. And they are the middle managers. That's where you often find the gaps in the challenges where the leadership is all in. But at the program level, when things need to be done and you're short staffed and you know the whole situation, those frontline supervisors are critical. And if they have a certification, they would probably be more likely to make sure that their DSPs follow through.
That's a great insight. Yeah, that level, that frontline supervisor, or
Boy,
even one bump up from there too. But talk about competing demands on
yeah.
and when an organization is stuck in that vicious cycle with the high vacancies and then everything that creates, it's so easy that the urgent is almost always um, trumping some of what could be important in the long run because you just like you're just trying to keep compliance, you're bucketing you're getting the water out of the boat. I mean that's your
You
can
gotta
feel
meet
like
the
that.
ratios. You gotta get the staff ratios. That's the priority, right? But here's the thing. A lot of frontline supervisors are promoted out of direct support professional status and put into a job completely unprepared. They may be a frontline supervisor because they were a really strong direct support professional, and that's great, but they're two completely different jobs. And when you're a frontline supervisor, you need to understand those particular competency sets and be able to do that. We just promote people and hope they figure it out. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, switching gears here, I know the NADSP does a lot with regard to advocacy, and I just thought it'd be great to at least touch on this for a few minutes. Um, I've heard, Joe, I think I've heard you speak on this in, I don't remember where, a podcast or somewhere, but about this push for federal occupation
Um,
classification. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
yeah.
that it's not in the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There is no direct support professional category. It gets lumped in with other types of care providers. Um, Speak for a minute about what's sort of the advocacy side or arm of NADSP, and why does that matter to,
Well,
or yeah, go ahead.
there's two things there, Nate. One is, we have the self-advocacy movement has it so spot on when they talk about nothing about me without me, right? That's a slogan that self-advocates have been using for years. But direct support professionals have relied on organization leadership to advocate on behalf of direct support professionals. So when we're trying to do impact state budgets, we have these rallies and we have meetings at the state houses, and the executive leadership of organizations go down and meet with their legislators and share the stories of their direct support professionals. Thank you very much for all of that. We appreciate that. But DSPs need to be in the rooms. They need to advocate for themselves. They need to understand their role in this vast system is truly the backbone of the system, that we use this rhetoric a lot. But DSPs, it's not their skill set. They need to share the challenges of their job, and there are many, but they also need to share the rewards of their job, and there are many. And they need to be at the table in all of these discussions. We have gone out of our way to try to provide training opportunities for DSPs on how to have an effective meeting with one of your state legislators. And there's a whole process that you can do it. So engaging DSPs in their own advocacy, it's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift, but we're not going to stop with that. The big thing you alluded to was the standard occupational classification. That is job codes that are recognized by the United States government, on which they collect data. They collect the numbers of people in this occupation, the numbers that we need in the future for this occupation, the wages, the turnover, all of that really rich data that's collected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics to inform labor economists about this occupation. Direct support professionals have been grouped with home health aides, personal care attendants, certified nursing assistants, because those three occupations have a title that's recognized, and we have good data on those titles. We have not been able to make the case that the direct support profession is different than those other caregiving occupations. And every 10 years, the Bureau of Labor Statistics goes through this process where they entertain new titles. And keep in mind, they want to keep the number of titles as low as possible, because the more titles they have, the more work they have to do. So it's easy to say, well, a direct support professional is very much like a home health aide or a personal care attendant, and that's true. But when you really get into the weeds, and people like Dan Hermreck live and breathe competencies. So we went through a crosswalk exercise and crosswalked the direct support professional competencies with those of those other caregiving occupations. And it's clear there are some shared skills in all caregiving jobs, but all caregiving jobs are not alike. And I believe in this process, we are going to be able to clearly demonstrate that a direct support professional's job is different than the others. And trust me, the folks at BLS know that we're advocating strongly for this. Last summer, there was a public commentary on the BLS website. 10,000 direct support professionals wrote letters. That's advocacy, and advocacy works. So I am cautiously optimistic that BLS, when they make their announcements in 2027, 2028, direct support professional will be a recognized job classification title. And then there's gonna be 2 or 3 years of complete chaos because they have to use that in rate setting at the state level. They have to come up with what is the real salary for this job because they've been defining getting their salaries from a composite of other caregiving types of work. 10% of a PCA, 50% of a home health aide, 10% of an LPN. Real data will lead to real wages. And after 2 or 3 years of chaos, we'll be able to create high school pipelines for direct support professionals at the high school level through vocational educational programs, because you need a SOC in order to do that.
Hmm.
College programs, grants, it's our number one priority. And getting DSPs to advocate for their professional recognition is step one to really being seen as a professional. Because then the eBadge Academy is gonna really be tested.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead, Dan.
absolutely. Yeah, you guys will have to make sure you're ready to scale.
We'll be hiring more reviewers.
Clearly, clearly. Yeah. Okay. Wow. So I guess to kind of, I'm really excited about the kind of that your cautious optimism and kind of the picture you're painting is what I'm excited about. But to kind of bring it back to the here and now for a listener who's in some kind of leadership role at a provider organization, they might be program manager up to they could be executive director or HR director, something like that. If you could encourage them to take one action after our conversation today, what would that be? And you can have different answers from each other if you'd like. That's
Go
fine.
ahead, Dan. Go ahead. You got anything?
I mean, short of something self-serving like contract for the eBadge Academy, I would say start looking at direct support through that lens of competency. Many organizations have something like an annual performance evaluation. And when I was involved with that, we spent so much time evaluating people on things like attendance and dress code compliance. And really, what we ought to be evaluating people on is their professional skills. And the competencies give you a framework to do that. Some DSPs will excel in some areas and struggle in others. And we've got to figure out, how do we take advantage of the skills they have and how do we build them up in the skills where they're struggling. A DSP who's excellent in crisis intervention might struggle with documentation. We need them in the field. We've got to help them build up their documentation skills. So I think that's the foundation is let's start looking at this work through a lens of these are professionals who are doing work using a set of professional skills.
The only thing I obviously I agree with Dan 100%. The only thing that I would add is 50% turnover should not be acceptable. It's not the cost of doing business. We need to invest more in ongoing professional development. Dan has this great line. A lot of organizations, it states the state training requirements for direct support professionals are a very, very low bar. And when you take a look at what is required at the state level to be a direct support professional, what is it, Dan? We're training people for their very worst day.
Yeah, we're training them for a bad day. Like, we train them on bloodborne pathogens because they need to know what to do, how to clean up blood. We train them for fire safety because we need them to know what to do when the building's on fire. Hopefully, a typical day of direct support, there's not a lot of blood to clean up and the building isn't on fire. And how much time do we spend training people to support people in their day-to-day lives outside of those worst case scenario emergency situations?
And the quality of the training. Who's doing the training? Are we lecturing these young professionals who really thrive on hands-on type of learning? Are we teaching adults the way adults want to learn? Are we sitting there I remember when I was hired, I was given the policy procedure manual, and it's like I was told to read it. That's not training. That's just a waste of time. So developing professionals in competency-based training, in training that is relevant to their work and helping people achieve outcomes that are meaningful to them in a way that is fun and a way that is engaging. These young professionals, that's what I would say. And that all can lead to certification, but we need to do a much better job in engaging in a true professional development for these workers.
Hmm. Very well said from both of you, really. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing how when you're investing in, we didn't even talk about this, but when you're investing in we talked about reducing turnover and things like that. But even just when it comes down to it, would you rather have a more skilled person working on your workforce or a less skilled person working on your workforce? I mean, the results themselves, like, you know, if you think about with any profession, it's just going to, like, the outcomes associated with that are going to be starkly different. So this has been just a great conversation to hear about the work that you guys are doing. I'm excited about where things are headed with all this, and thank you so much for your time. I'll certainly put in the show notes the website, and encourage, definitely it's going to be great for listeners if they're not already familiar or not already involved with the eBadge Academy to check that out.
Yeah, it was our pleasure, Nate.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Wow. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I do. I love learning from the guests that come on this show, and my sincerest hope is that you do as well. Now, I don't even know where to begin to summarize other than what a bright and hopeful future that I see with the things that Joe was just sharing when it comes to this workforce getting the recognition that is long overdue. And I'm super hopeful that things will keep moving in the right direction as he was describing it. And then the other thing I'm really hopeful about is as more and more organizations, hopefully including yours, adopts the credentialing process, this standardization that's happening for direct support professionals, and the results that come from that, the dropping of turnover and the skill building that happens, and then the results for the individuals being served. It's just sort of this tremendous positive synergy that I'm seeing with what he shared. And that leads me right into the action move. I always try to leave you with an action move. This is actually a repeat from last week. By all means, go to their website, nadsp.org, and sign up your first cohort if you have not already done that when it comes to getting your workforce credentialed. Hopefully you already are, and this is just encouragement like, hey, keep it up. It's going great. The only other thing I want to mention is that I've created a free resource to help your supervisors when it comes to managing people. This is a real sticking point for a lot of supervisors that get promoted. They kind of don't really know what it means to be a boss. I mean, no one trained them on it. And so here they are trying to have these difficult conversations with staff and they're not sure what to do. Anyhow, I've created a free resource. You can download it at iddleader.com/supervisor. And I'd love to share it with you so that you can help your supervisors. It just gives 4 simple habits that will really help them as they're in that role. Anyhow, until next time, here's to you. Keep up the amazing work.